Welcome to another week of second language acquisition. For this week, we'll be looking at aptitude and learner differences. So, in previous lessons, we have learned that L2 learners learn language at a different rate. So, they are different speed in which they acquire or learn the second language. So, why are there difference in language learning rate? Well, we have talked about concepts and theories affecting language learning rate. Now we'll be looking at the different varieties of language learning rate from the aspect of the individual. Primarily these two, one, aptitude, and secondly, individual differences. We have talked about the environment factors as well as theories and concepts which influences language learning. Now we're looking at the individual perspective or individual aspect on them affecting the rate of learning languages. So in this upcoming lesson, we'll be looking at four things. We'll be trying to identify what is aptitude, explain the role of aptitude for L2 learning or second language learning, identify the different factors relating to individual differences influencing L2, as well as discuss how these factors rate the L2 learning speed. So, in order to understand the different learning rate among learners, researchers looked from the psychological factors, and they make a distinction between these three following concepts, namely cognition, conation, and affect. So, what are these three concepts? Let's take a look. Ortega has defined these three concepts as, firstly, cognition as how information is being processed and learned in the human mind. So, it talks about the brain processing and storing the linguistics form of the particular language, and also how it's being used in the environment. Secondly, we take a look at affect. Ortega mentions that affect encompasses issues of temperament, emotions, and how L2 learners feel towards information, people, objects, actions, and thoughts. It is said that with emotions, through emotions, you choose the particular words to try to express those emotions. So if you're feeling happy, you will make a positive statement or use words to reflect how you're feeling. So affect is also one type of way which could affect learning. And finally, we look at conation, which is how L2 learners use their will and freedom to make choices that results in new behaviors. So here, if let's say the L2 learner wants to get to a certain point or to get the audience or their listener to agree with them or produce something, the speaker will use particular words or phrases or sentences to get to that particular point. And in that resulting in new behaviors or new directions of speaking or communicating. Right, so all these three concepts or factors, they interact together in a symbiotic manner. So it does not work alone or in isolation. Rather, it works all together to encourage or influence L2 learning rate. And this also highlights the differences in the learners themselves in learning a particular language. So there are different types. There are 7 different types of psychological factors which Seville Troik has identified in terms of influencing learning rate. First, we have gender. Then we have cognitive style, personality, age, aptitude, which is one of the major key points in actually affecting or influencing L2 learning rates, and motivation. And finally, learning strategies taken in by the learners themselves to actually learn that particular language. These are not taught, rather these are strategies undertaken by the learners themselves in an environment automatically to help themselves communicate or to ensure there is no gap of communication between the speaker and the learner. So, what are the advantages of young learners and adult learners in terms of learning a second language? Well, if you're younger, number one, you're not so analytical. You don't think how language is being structured. So you can just put all sentences together and just, try and keep on trying until someone say, hey, that's not the right way of saying it should be this. And so the younger person will have fewer inhibitions. They won't be so shy when people say, hey, that's wrong, that's a mistake. So in that sense, they are more receptive to learning. Their brain they have that plasticity. It's not so set in their ways. So when you're younger, your brain has that rate of absorption, which is much more spongy compared to older learners. And then we have, of course, weaker group identities, where they do not feel that they need to identify with everyone, so they only need to learn how to speak in a certain way. So that's one way of getting them to encourage them to actually speak, to learn the language. And finally, they use simplified input. So grammatical rules are not very difficult. They're actually very simple. So once they are able to digest and store those input, it is very easy for them to absorb the language. So now let's take a break here, and let's discuss among your classmates on how true these advantages are for the younger learners, and then we'll come back again to the oldest learners. Right, so let's take a break, and I'll see you right back.